Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron. Some breaking news coming out of Everton Football Club. Marcel Brands has signed a new 3-year deal with Everton, keeping him at the club until 2024. The Everton Director of Football has signed on the dotted line finally after months of speculation as to whether or not he would sign. For me personally, I knew that this was an inevitability. I knew that Marcel Brands was always going to sign the new contract. He's a member of the board. He's down on the company house website as a director of Everton Football Club, and I think the reason that this is being done now and not 2, 3, 4 months ago, for example, is it's just purely because the club have felt that it wasn't something that they should be worried about. It wasn't something that they have to particularly prioritise, and that there was other things that they wanted to focus on first before Marcel Brands' contract, because they knew it would be a case of him just getting the piece of paper out and signing it. Basically, we're going to talk a little bit about Marcel Brands in this video, but firstly, before we do that, Bill Kenwright, the Everton chairman, has had some words to say on Everton's Director of Football. He has said about Marcel Brands, there hasn't really been any doubt for some time that Marcel and I would sit down and agree a contract. With Farhad's blessing, it took us around one play of Z-Cars to reach an agreement. He also said, as well as being terrific at his job, Marcel has an excellent working relationship with Carlo and with our CEO Denise and myself. It was important to maintain the structure and stability we have put in place over recent years. He also said, Farhad and I both wish our leadership team success and happiness as we all work together to build an exciting future for our great football club. So, strong words there from Bill Kenwright. There you go. Again, explaining that there was never really any doubt about Marcel Brands' new contract, that the club believe he's fantastic at his job and they want him to stay on. And look, the fact that Marcel Brands is a member of Everton's board, like I mentioned, it clearly shows the trust and the faith that, the likes of Bill Kenwright, Farhad Mashiri and Denise Barrett-Baxendale have in Marcel Brands. He spoke recently at an AGM meeting, and he spoke about the fact that Everton have managed, since Marcel Brands has been at the football club, to, quite significantly trim the amount of players that are in the current squad, however, increase the value of those players. So, for example, I think Everton went from something like 40-odd players down to maybe 25, something like that. Or, no, I think we went from 44 players down to 30 players. However, the value of the squad increased, so it was more with the 30 than it was with the 40. So that shows from a financial standpoint and from a business standpoint, Marcel Brands is clearly doing well at his job. We're going to talk about some of his signings as well a little bit later on and give my opinion on to whether or not I think it's the right move. I think it's a good deal for the football club. But yeah, it's very, very clear that the Everton board, Bill Kenwright, Farhad Mashiri, are happy with Marcel Brands' time at the football club so far. He's 3 years in. He signed another 3-year contract, so effectively he's halfway through his Everton contract at the moment. He's halfway through this project, and I think stability is a key word used by Bill Kenwright there. It would be pretty silly of Everton now to let Marcel Brands walk out the door and then go and bring in another director of football, because effectively it does the same as what would happen if Carlo Ancelotti walked out the door and we brought another manager in. We'd be back to the first year of this project, and we can't keep agreeing to 5-year projects. It's going to be a project with this manager in place and it's going to take 5 years, or it's going to take 4, 5, 6 years with this director of football, and then halfway through, sacking them and having to start that process all over again, because it just gets tedious, certainly for us as fans. So it would have been quite silly, and I agree with Bill Kenwright in regards to stability. Look, has Marcel Brands' time at Everton been perfect so far? No. Has he made some mistakes? Absolutely. Has he got an absolutely massive summer ahead of him this summer with Carlo Ancelotti? He has, which we'll talk about in a second. But overall, I think it's a good deal, and it's very, very clear that Bill Kenwright and Farhad Mashiri do as well. And look, it's nice to hear them come out and say that it was never, ever in doubt. It wasn't a case of months and months of negotiating and this, that and the other. It was just a case of that it was sort of, we hadn't really talked about it because we knew it wouldn't be much of an issue. And as soon as we did talk about it, it was signed pretty much straight after. Marcel Brands himself has come out and done an interview with EvertonFC.com. He has said that Everton is a very special club and a club with clear and exciting ambitions. We are making good progress, and I believe we have everything in place for us to be more successful. He also said, I'm delighted to continue to work alongside such supportive and ambitious colleagues on our board of executive team. And this, together with such a talented manager and supportive owner and chairman, puts us in a really strong position for the future. So there you go. Very clear that Marcel Brands himself wanted to continue at Everton. Marcel Brands himself saw his own future at this football club. And overall, like I said, for me, for me, it's a good deal. For me, it's the right deal. And I understand there might be a little bit of frustration, and I understand that some Evertonians mightn't necessarily be happy with Marcel Brands' new contract, or mightn't necessarily have been happy with Marcel Brands' time at Everton Football Club. And look, has he signed some players for ridiculous money that haven't worked out? Yes, he has. Has he made mistakes? Yes, he has. But you also have to look at the positives to Marcel Brands' time at Everton Football Club. Has he brought in some players that have been excellent and ultimately have had a positive impact on Everton? Well, yes, he has, since he joined Everton Football Club. Obviously, we've signed the likes of Richarlison, James Rodriguez, Alan, but if we're conceding that those players have come from the management, so Carlo Ancelotti with James and Alan, and obviously Marco Silva with Richarlison, which is fair enough because the likelihood is that is the case, then we have to look at the likes of Luca Dean, Yerry Mina, of course, has come in through Marcel Brands' time. Ben Godfrey, more recently, who was a Marcel Brands signing. Carlo Ancelotti has openly said that. He didn't know much about Ben Godfrey, but he's very happy the club made the signing because he's a brilliant player. Even going into the younger players, Jared Branthwaite, who was a Marcel Brands signing and come in at the back end of last season and done fantastically well. Okay, he's gone out on loan now, and I'm not saying he's this big first team superstar. He's not yet, but he's got all of the potential to be that in the future. Nazem Kunku is a Marcel Brands signing, of course. He come in and when he's played, he's impressed this this season. And then we've had the likes of Robin Olsen, who have also come in during this time. I know we had Jibril Sidibe on loan, who didn't really work out, and there has been a couple of players who, I think are the main sort of factors in maybe some people's opinions being that Marcel Brands hasn't had a great time at the football club. Your likes of your Fabian Delphs and probably your Alex Iwobis you could count in that in that sort of factor as well. But for me, I think, with the exception of Alex Iwobi, who we'll talk about in a second, I think every signing that Marcel Brands has made, there's been a reason for him making. I mean, I'm not saying that every signing that Marcel Brands has made has been a positive or has ultimately been worth the money that we've paid, let's say, for example, but I think near enough every signing that he has made, like I said, with the exception of Alex Iwobi, when those players come into Everton, we weren't sort of sitting there scratching our heads thinking, why have we signed this player? I mean, let's look at a couple of examples. Fabian Delph, Marcel Brands signed Fabian Delph, and yes, we all sit here now, and with 2-3 years down the line with Fabian Delph being an Everton player, and we can quite comfortably say he's been a complete and utter waste of money because he's hardly played any games for the football club. He's come in, he spent 99% of his time at the football club on the injury bed, and he spent the rest of his time arguing with fans. He's had no positive impact on the field whatsoever for the football club, and he is probably getting paid £70,000-80,000 a week. So we can all sit here in hindsight and say that was a bad signing for Marcel Brands to make. Marcel Brands made the mistake by bringing in Fabian Delph. But I take myself back to the day Fabian Delph signed for Everton. I remember it very, very well. I sat down and I done a video on the channel. You could probably go back however many years it was and see it. And I remember saying that it was a good signing for Everton. Fabian Delph was coming in for £8 million at the time. He'd had experience in winning Premier League titles with Manchester City, experience in playing in the Champions League with Manchester City. He'd won domestic trophies as well. It was the year after the Amazon Prime documentary for Manchester City was brought out, and that was quite heavily focused around Fabian Delph's presence in the dressing room. It wasn't focused just purely on that, but during that documentary in various episodes you can see Fabian Delph talking to the players and seeming to rile the players up, and it was that leadership that you could see was the reason as to why Marcel Brands thought that Fabian Delph would be a great signing for Everton. He thought that Fabian Delph was going to come in and employ that leadership and employ that sort of mentality, that winning mentality on to this football club. If you like, a little bit like Phil Neville done when he come in. Wasn't the greatest of footballers. We knew from the off that Fabian Delph wasn't going to be the greatest of footballers. He wasn't going to be brilliant on the pitch. But we all thought for £8 million, if you're going to get a player that comes in can rile a dressing room up in big games and can, express the importance of certain games and winning trophies and being that leader on the pitch, then he'll be a great signing. He hasn't been that. He's come in, he seemed like he wanted the big payday, and ultimately he's not been a success, and that's fine. And we can all sit here retrospectively, like I said, and say we should have been aware of that. We should have seen that coming. We should have seen Fabian Delph was only joining Everton for another big payday. He wasn't really interested. But I can just only speak on my opinion. Maybe anybody watching this video, maybe when we signed Fabian Delph, you all sat back and went, no, I don't like that, I didn't want Fabian Delph, and that's fine, but I can only speak from my point, and my point was, I remember when we signed him, I thought, that's not a bad signing, that he could come in and give us a little bit of leadership for £8 million, he could come in and rile this team up to win those types of games that we need to win, that we're not winning, aka the big games, your derbies, etc. Has he done that? No, he hasn't. You then look at a Moise Kean, for example, who come in the 2018 season, last season under Marco Silva, just before Marco Silva was sacked. And has he been a success at Everton Football Club so far? No, he hasn't been a success at Everton Football Club so far. He went through the entirety of last season. He didn't really get much game time whatsoever. He had probably 2 decent games, maybe 3 decent games. I remember Newcastle at home, when we threw that one, he was decent under Ancelotti. I remember Bournemouth last game of the season, he had a decent game. But other than that, okay, he wasn't given ample opportunity. He wasn't played, every game for 90 minutes. But even still, the times that he come on in those types of games, the games that he did start, he wasn't massively impressive. And Moise Kean decided himself this summer, or last summer should I say, that he wanted to go out on loan, he wanted to go and play his football elsewhere. And I don't blame Moise Kean. I've got no remorse or negative feeling towards Moise Kean whatsoever. He's a young lad who didn't want to be sitting on the bench week in, week out. Again, I've done a video when Moise Kean signed for PSG, and I sat here and said, why is Moise Kean signing for PSG? He's only going to go and sit on their bench. What's the difference in sitting on our bench to their bench? But he didn't. He's proved us all wrong. He's proved me wrong, certainly, and I dare say he's proved a lot of other Evertonians wrong in the fact that he's gone to PSG and he's playing week in, week out. He's starting, he's, he's scoring goals, he's scoring in Champions League quarterfinals. So, for as much as we can sit here and say Moise Kean has been a bad signing for Everton because he's not come in and done it for Everton and he cost us £30 million, if Moise Kean comes back to Everton in the summer and Marcel Brands manages to sell him for 60 million pounds, then has it really been a bad signing? Yes, it's been frustrating and it's been disappointing because when we signed them in the 2019 summer, we weren't signing Moise Kean with the expectation of, he'd have a good season on loan somewhere else and then we'd sell him. We were signing him thinking he could be the next big thing. He could be our next, Romelu Lukaku, if you like, the next big striker in Europe who comes through at Everton and is consistently scoring goals. But he wasn't ultimately. He hasn't been that. And again, it hasn't worked. But if we make a profit on Moise Kean, if we bring him back and then sell him for a profit, then has it been such a negative? Has it been a bad signing? Because we've ultimately brought in a player for this price and we've sold him for that price a couple of years later without him really doing much for the football club. And then you have to look at some of the positive signings that Marcel Brands has made, and not just the positive signings that Marcel Brands has made, by the way. Even look at the likes of James Rodriguez. We know James Rodriguez wasn't a Marcel Brands signing. We know James Rodriguez is here for Carlo Ancelotti. He joined Everton Football Club because of Carlo Ancelotti. He's openly admitted that himself. We know Alan joined Everton Football Club because of Carlo Ancelotti. But look at the way in which those deals were constructed in the summer. James Rodriguez come in on a free transfer. I remember the rumours regarding James, probably this time last year, to be honest, that we were going to sign him for 25, 30 million pounds. And even then I wanted him because of that quality. But I did also think, well, that much money for a 29-year-old, is it really going to be beneficial for us? And I get that James has come in on probably 200 grand a week. I get that wages is still a little bit of an issue here. But the way in which the James deal went through, Florentino Perez at Real Madrid, who has been in a lot of people's mouths, been in a lot of people's minds over the last 24, 48 hours or so. We're actually not going to talk about the Super League today, surprisingly. We might do another live stream on it later because, funnily enough, it's all fell to crap, which was, let's be honest, what we all thought would happen. But disgustingly, those teams don't look like they're going to be punished. But anyway, Florentino Perez come out in the summer and thrown his weight about, no, we won't sell James for less than this amount of money. If Everton want him, they're going to have to pay this amount of money. We're in control, this, that and the other. Marcel Brands went and got James Rodriguez on a free transfer. Still, even after James signed, there was still news articles, still newspapers, journalists coming out and saying, he signed for 25 million, he signed for 30 million, blah, blah, blah. It was literally announced by FIFA a few days ago that James Rodriguez signed on a free transfer for Everton Football Club. He didn't cost us a penny. Yes, he's costing us a lot in wages, I get that, but he didn't cost us a penny. Abdoulaye Doucouré, Watford wanted £30 odd million for him last summer. Everton, a year after that, I spent £20 odd million on him. I remember Watford coming out and saying, we won't be pushed, we won't be badgered, this is our price and we won't drop it. Let alone a few months later, they drop it and we get Abdoulaye Doucouré for an unbelievable price. Alan is the big one for me because Again, Carlo Ancelotti signing, and we can all sit here and say Richarlison's Marcel Brands, Alan and James are Carlo Ancelotti, so they don't class as Marcel Brands signings. Well, effectively and realistically, they do class as Marcel Brands signings, because although they mightn't have been the players that Marcel Brands wanted to sign, although Marcel Brands mightn't have had those names in his mind until the manager come in and said, bring in this player, bring in that player, Marcel Brands has still had to go out and negotiate that deal. Marcel Brands has still had to go negotiate that contract. Marcel Brands has still had to go to Napoli, who, let me remind you, by the way, 2-3 days before Alan signed for Everton, the Napoli president, I can't remember his name, but the Napoli president was coming out and saying, we will not be badgered, we have got impenetrable armour, if Everton want Alan, they will have to pay our price, 35 million, this, that and the other. There's no way we will drop our price, we will not do that, blah, blah, blah. Couple of days later, Alan signs for Everton, and we're all sitting there in the same way as we were when James signed, thinking, yeah, brilliant player, great that he's come in, but how much have we signed this player for? How much have we, effectively, how much have we spent this summer? We must have spent 150 million. I remember sitting there at the end of the transfer window thinking, we must have spent about 120, 130 million pounds here on these players. A few months later, the AGM comes out and it's announced that Everton spent £60 million last summer. £60 million, 20 odd on Ben Godfrey, 20 odd on Adelaide Decore, and 20 odd on Alan. So this impenetrable armour that Napoli were throwing about and saying, we will not be moved, this is our price and it won't drop, Marcel Brands has gone in there and managed to drop that price. I don't know what he said, I don't know what he's done, but he's managed to drop that price. He's managed to go into Real Madrid and negotiate a deal which allows James Rodriguez, arguably one of the best football players that Everton have had in a long, long time, certainly my lifetime, come in on a free transfer, and he had time left on his contract as well. Marcel Brands could have easily gone into Real Madrid and gone, how much do you want for him? We want 30, yeah, we'll sign him. How much do you want for Alan? We want 30, yeah, we'll sign him. How much do you want for Decore? 30, yeah, we'll sign him. And Everton could have spent 3 times as much as we did spend in that summer, but he didn't. He went in and went, how much do you want for him? Well, we want 30 for James, that ain't going to work. And he spent however many weeks and months badgering about it, and we ended up bringing him in on a free. It shows that Marcel Brands knows what he's doing. It shows that Marcel Brands understands his role, understands his job. Has he made some mistakes in the past? Yes, he has. He's brought some players in that haven't worked. But look at the players that he's brought in that have worked. James on a free. Yes, his contract will be massive, but on a free. Alan for £10 million cheaper than what Napoli's impenetrable armour was. Adelaide Decore for, £10 million cheaper than what Watford wanted. Ben Godfrey, who come in for £20 million. I didn't know much about Ben Godfrey. I remember the day we signed him, I was thinking, is he really worth £20 million? I don't know much about him. He's been our player of the season this season. He's been absolutely immense. He's been fantastic. And again, like I said, he is a Marcel Brands signing. So even the non-Marcel Brands signings, Marcel Brands has still had a lot to do with in terms of negotiating contracts and negotiating their deals and how much money Everton are going to pay for those players. But the Marcel Brands signings themselves, the players that Marcel Brands has looked at and went, they need to come in and improve Everton. Ben Godfrey, Luca Dean, you could say, even the younger ones, Jared Branthwaite, Niles Nkunku, they've all had near enough a positive impact, barring Fabian Delph, who again hasn't been great, Alex Iwobi we'll talk about in a second, and Andre Gomes, who ultimately, again, I feel like Andre Gomes was very similar to the Fabian Delph situation. We brought him in on loan with no strings attached. He had a fantastic season, and then we went out and signed him for 20 million. Has he worked in the long run or with his wage and how much we pay for him? Probably not. No, he's still at the football club, so we don't know. But he probably won't work out to be worth as much as we paid for him. But imagine if Everton wouldn't have signed Andre Gomes after that year on loan, and we'd have gone out and signed another midfielder for a bit cheaper, and they'd have been dreadful. We'd have all been sitting here saying, why didn't we just sign Gomes? He had the year on loan, he was brilliant. Why didn't we just spend the money? Marcel Brands spent the money on a player that had a fantastic year. He come in, he had a big injury, and now he's not, he's alright. He's probably not worth that money. Fabian Delph, Marcel Brands spent the money on a lad that was coming in with leadership, with effort, with fight. He showed none of that whatsoever. It hasn't worked. I do want to talk about Alex Iwobi because I think he's the one player that whenever you say Marcel Brands in or not, yeah or no, or in or out, or do you agree with the new contract or not, Alex Iwobi is the first player that comes to people's minds. So we will talk about him in just a second. But yeah, ultimately, a lot of those players that Marcel Brands has brought in since he's been at Everton Football Club have either been a success or are currently we're looking at thinking they're very, very important to this Everton team, i.e., your Richarlison's wasn't a great season this season, your Ben Godfrey's now, your James's, your Alans, your Decores, your Luca Deans, the majority of the players that we sit here and we praise and we say are the most important to this club have come in from Marcel Brands. And I'm not just sitting here trying to, lick Marcel Brands' bottom and trying to, persuade anybody that he's brilliant at his job and that he's not made a mistake. He has made a mistake. Alex Iwobi, let's talk about Alex Iwobi for a second. Look, he's still at the football club, so I don't want to sit here and go in on him. But ultimately, the money that Everton spent on Alex Iwobi has not been he's not being worth that so far. And Alex Iwobi, I feel, was the only Marcel Brands signing that the majority of Everton fans sort of sat here and scratched their heads when it happened and thought, I don't really understand that. As and when it happened, it's all good in hindsight doing it with other players now, but I feel like Alex Iwobi is one of the only. This is just all my opinion, by the way. Everybody can have a different opinion. That's why we should have done this as a live stream, but I thought I'd just do a quick video, and I should have done it as a live stream to get people's opinions. But on our next live, we'll talk about it so we can get everyone's opinions. This is just my thoughts. Leave yours in the comments. But for me, Alex Iwobi was the one player that, everyone was sort of scratching their heads when Everton signed. Everyone sort of didn't quite understand when Everton signed. Everyone sort of didn't quite understand why. I think still to this day, a year and a half later, whatever it's been, I still think people don't quite fully understand why we signed Alex Iwobi, me being one of those people. But ultimately, again, I think there was a plan with Alex Iwobi and it hasn't worked, and look, whether he'll be here next season or not is another question. If he will be, great. If he won't be, then hopefully we can make some money back on him. I don't think we'll make the full money back on Alex Iwobi, to be honest with you. But yeah, again, just showing that Marcel Brands' time at the football club has not been perfect. He has spent a lot of money, Marcel Brands, and we're still not a consistent challenger for Europe. So I get that there's people that are frustrated. I get that there's people that are saying, we've spent a lot of money and we're still not in that fight, so how can you be happy with him signing a new contract? But again, like I said, you have to look at other aspects of it. He's managed to get rid of a lot of players that have no future at the football club. He's managed to get rid of a lot of players that don't really want to be here. And now, in those 3 years that he's been at Everton Football Club, he's brought in decent players. He spent a lot of money on decent players that haven't been good enough ultimately to take us to that next step that we want. But he's also focused a lot of his time on getting rid of those players that have got no future at the football club. So now, within the next 3 years of his contract, we're halfway through. Now we have to focus on improving this squad to the point where these players are good enough to take Everton into the European competitions, the Europa League, the Champions League, take us into Bramley-Moore Docks being a consistent Champions League challenger, because that's what we need, and that's now down to Marcel Brands. And this is a big summer for Marcel Brands and Carlo Ancelotti, a massive summer. Last summer was massive for the pair of them. This one is massive as well, because ultimately, if we finish in a European position this season, great, brilliant, sound. We need to go and drastically improve this squad anyway, because the squad isn't currently good enough to compete in a European competition. If we don't, then next season it's absolutely imperative that we do. So we still have to go out and drastically improve this squad and bring in a better quality of players. So this summer is massive for Everton. It's massive for Marcel Brands. It's massive for Carlo Ancelotti. And Marcel Brands has got a big job ahead of him now. Now that he's signed and sealed, that's what he's got to focus on. Let's talk about stability. Bill Kenwright, alluded to it in his statement. I think Everton's stance is quite clear now, and I think the stance is the right one as well, because I think they're adopting the same with Carlo Ancelotti. We've found the right manager. We've found the manager with the pedigree. We've found the manager that we all know can take us to that next level. And now the club have found the director of football who they want to be in charge to work alongside that manager and work alongside those board directors to also take us to that next level. And I think that stability is key. It's absolutely key. It's stability and consistency go hand in hand. And yes, Everton haven't been very consistent on the pitch, and I get that. And I get we need to improve in that element. But ultimately, if Marcel Brands had walked tomorrow, well, let's say Everton would have sacked Marcel Brands or not renewed his contract, then we'd have just had to go out and find another director of football, and we'd have just been back to square one with his players, and then we'd have been saying, oh, well, they're not his players, so he needs to be, have time to sign his players. Yes, there's been players that Marcel Brands has brought in that haven't been a success, but ultimately it's now a 6-year plan, and we're halfway through it, and this next half of it is the most important half, and Everton and Marcel Brands have to go out and ultimately succeed effectively, and the succeed being successful is being a consistent challenger in the Europa League for European competition. Sorry, be it the Europa League or the Champions League, and from the club's words themselves, being a challenger in the Premier League as well, and at that top end of the spectrum. So there's a lot of work for Marcel Brands to be done. I'm not saying he's perfect, and I'm not saying he's been unbelievably excellent. There's been a lot of critics of him, and rightly so. But I think it's the right deal. I think it's the right move. I think it's the right move for the club in terms of stability, and I think Marcel Brands has done very, very well at getting rid of those players that don't want to be at the club and haven't got a future at the club, but by maintaining the value of the club, or even increasing the value of the club. Now he has to solely focus on the first team and improving this first team to be a team challenging for the Champions League and the Premier League ultimately, and that's his job, and that's Carlo Ancelotti's job, and they have to work together to do that in the summer. So listen, overall I'm happy with the news. I think it like I said, it provides that stability, and ultimately it now leaves there's no questions unanswered now. There's no doubts. There's no grey area. There's no purgatory. We know where we are. We know it's Marcel Brands for the next 3 years. We know it's Carlo Ancelotti for hopefully the next many years to come. And we know that those two now have to work massively in the summer to bring in 4, 5, 6 players to drastically improve this Everton team, and to make sure that if we're not playing in Europe next season, we're definitely playing in it the season after. So yeah, there you go. That is the latest news. Marcel Brands has signed a new 3-year contract with Everton, keeping him at the club until 2024. Let us know your thoughts on this one in the comments. I can see the majority agreeing with it and being happy with it, but there may be some people that aren't so happy with it. If you are, let me know either opinion. Let me know in the comment section down below. We'll do another live stream a bit later on today, probably talking about the Super League a bit more and talking about this, so we'll get involved in the live comments. But as it's not live, I really, really want to hear your thoughts, so get them down in the YouTube comments. If you've enjoyed this one, please do leave it a like. It only takes a second. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to check out the Football News 365 app as well. Keeps us up to date with all your latest Everton news, scores. Link is in the description. Yeah, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Leave the video a like if you've enjoyed it. And we'll see you soon on the Mighty Blues.